Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to reveal to you a new series that has recently started, just like the few other weeks before. This series is from Shonen Jump Plus and goes by the name of Skeleton Double. It is done by Tokyo Ghoul, if I pronounced the name correctly. They created one other manga before, at least one I could find, and that is by the name of, let me try to pronounce that, Katazukirarenai Kami-sama. It was only a one-shot in Shonen Jump Plus, and that means that Skeleton Double is actually the first ever fully serialized series. Judging from the cover that you can see here, it is going to be interesting. I at least find that this cover looks very nice, but the main character looks a pretty average, it is an average Japanese high schooler, so yeah, he looks average. But the blonde girl is pretty, and well, the skeleton, or the skull, I have no idea what that is about. But the art style is at least something you can look forward to. But for now, let us take a look at the summary of the manga to see what my first impression will be. So here it is. A man dies a mysterious death just outside Shinjuku Station. 8 years later, his son Yodomi Arakawa is leading a tranquil life until he meets an invisible man? And to learn the truth behind his father's death, Yodomi will have to become invisible himself. Now, that was quite interesting. Capturing people with mysteries in a summary. Not something rare, but it gets used for obvious reasons. Assuming that our protagonist is the boy on the cover, which he most likely is, he has a pretty standard design, as I said, but that never has been something to turn me off. I am, after all, a very big enjoyer of isekai anime, and they basically look all the same. The question is if the invisible man from the summary is the floating skull, or somebody completely else? Maybe there are multiple invisible men, I'm not sure. And who is this blonde girl? We have never heard anything about her in that summary. But from the summary alone, it's a bit hard to say if this is gonna be a long or a short story. After all, a boy trying to figure out the death of his father can either be a long-time project, but the author could also throw the killer into our face in chapter 1 already. There are many ways this story can turn out, so the first chapter is important to set the pace and the direction of the story. Then comes the part about invisibility. What does that exactly mean? The first thought of, I think, everybody, it would just be literal invisibility. But there are many different ways this could turn out, like just being invisible to society because of whatever reason the story says. After all, even in Bleach, hollows and shinigamis are invisible to normal people. You need to be special to see these creatures. That could explain how our protagonist can see Invisible Man, because he is special. Or we go down the technology route, and the man was just wearing some sort of invisibility suit. But what use are these assumptions? This was my first impression, without having read anything besides the summary of Skeleton Double. Now let's read the first chapter and talk about my opinion again. There are actually currently 4 chapters out, but for the sake of this series, I'm just going to read the first one and then come back to you. Just give me a second. Okay, let me tell you guys, from here on out this video will contain spoilers for chapter 1 of Skeleton Double. If you want to read the chapter first, like always I put a link in the description, but for everybody still here or here again, let's get into it. A lot of things went exactly as I expected, but then there was also a twist or multiple twists that I didn't predict, and those can make the power system of the series very complex and change the way the entire story will develop. So, as we already know, the father of Yodomi Arakawa died very mysteriously 8 years ago. But from what we see in the first half of the chapter, the protagonist and his family have pretty much accepted their situation, and now their lives are pretty ordinary. Our main character doesn't seem to have any sort of ambition to do anything special. His life in high school can be described as completely average. But just like with any typical shonen story, one single event is about to happen that will change his life forever. One day he comes back from his school, and in front of his home is a package, but it is addressed to his father that has been dead for 8 years already. For us as the reader, the next string of events is a bit unclear, as the main character gets knocked unconscious from the contents of the package, and when he awakens, well, he suddenly has superpowers. The invisibility superpowers that the entire series is going to work around. I kind of hope we learn more about the specifics of gaining these powers, like in future chapters, but for now that should be enough. But now the main character is a superhero. Well, not a superhero, he has only superpowers. Another thing in the package was the skull we see on the cover of the manga. And it's not just some decorative skull, it can actually talk and is our main tool or person to learn more about the world and the power system. So our current situation is that this skull somehow turned the protagonist into an invisible person, aka a skeleton. It is entirely unclear why an invisible person is called a skeleton, but let's just go for it now. I hope it gets explained in a chapter after the first. While being in the skeleton form, the main character has an altered physical appearance, and to normal people he is also invisible. But as far as I can see, his clothes don't become invisible. This could also just be the way of the author doing things, like so that we still see the clothes, but for actual people the invisibility also makes the clothes invisible. Otherwise all of these skeleton people would need to be naked, and that much nudity wouldn't really work for shonen manga, I think. Then we get into the philosophical part of this chapter. I actually really like this part, but for the sake of telling you about the actual plot and everything else of the story, we are going to jump over it, but I can only recommend you read this manga because it is quite interesting so far. On a different day, Mr. Skull asks Yodomi to go on a small trip together, and we see how close Yodomi is to his mother and sister. This trip should have been the time for Mr. Skull to reveal our protagonist why he gave him these powers and how they actually work. However, they get interrupted before this happens. The person interrupting them is another invisible man, another skeleton, because that's what they are called. Here we quickly learn that switching between the skeleton form and the normal human form apparently heals the person from any wound they received in the other form. And I will continue to believe this until they tell me otherwise in another chapter. We also get another major reveal for a first chapter. This one, however, I'm going to keep a secret. So if you still haven't checked it out, do it already, because I'm going to continue now. For the final pages, we already see development in the main characters. Well, in Yodomi's character, he finally shows that he also can have ambition, willpower and determination, even if he himself isn't really sure what he really wants. But in this situation, he wanted something so much that made him move regardless of the situation. He would normally have never jumped into this situation after all. Being shown as an indecisive person, the main character has already shown us traits that make him interesting. Where exactly the story will go, well, I basically know as much after reading the first chapter as I did before reading it. So I basically don't know anything. But it is shown that it is willing to go to the darker side of manga. Plus, following Yodomi on his journey of learning more about his past, or like his dad's past, these powers that he just received, and everything else makes it very cool in my opinion. I'm using the word interesting quite a lot. That's all for my first thoughts in the chapter. But now let's get into the segments of me spouting out instantly created theories and ideas for future plot points. First of all, why are the invisible people called skeletons? How does that make any sense? Feel free to tell me your ideas in the comments of this video. But if you read future chapters and it already got revealed, well, I don't think it's necessary anymore. Also, how does this creation process exactly work? We'll need to get these questions answered, but if we are unlucky, this might take until the end of the manga. All we know is that before Yodomi got his powers, he opened up a mysterious capsule. Talking about these capsules, the man looking for the skull also had a capsule that he carried around with him. However, that capsule was much smaller and seemed to have some sort of gravitational pull towards Mr. Skull. It could be a device to find specific skeleton people, or maybe our skull is even more special than we think after this first chapter. The world of Skeleton Double looks dangerous, especially for just an average Japanese high school boy like our protagonist. But now that he has been pulled into this situation, there are a lot of things he will have to learn. Just a few things include training his powers, training his mind, and training or discovering his ambition. Yodomi will have to go through a lot of pain. I already know that. and I'm kinda scared for his mother and sister. I hope nobody takes him as hostages. But as soon as I finish this script, I will read the remaining chapters that are available at this moment. Maybe I make an update video once I feel that the first arc is over. Compared to last video's Ginka and Luna, I have to say I like this first chapter much more. I'm going to try to give the new series I introduced to you a score to show you how much I enjoyed the first chapter. So the scores will be fully my personal opinion, and you might feel very different about some manga, but you can tell me your ranking of these manga that I introduced to you in the comments down below as well. Because it's a new series, I will give you the score for both Ginka and Luna and Skeleton Double today. To keep it simple and short, Ginka and Luna has potential. It is shown a vast world with many different creatures and magic that can apparently do everything. But the main character has grown strong very fast, and I enjoy stories with slower growth more. Because of that, I will give Ginka and Luna a solid 7.2 out of 10 for the first chapter. Skeleton Double, on the other hand, has done exactly what I like. Slower exposition, showing the weakness of the main character, but also his willingness to improve. While the world in this manga doesn't seem as big as Ginka and Luna's, it also has shown us mysteries and dangers that will be very cool to experience, together with Yodomi. For all these reasons, I want to give the first chapter of Skeleton Double an 8.5 out of 10. And that's all for this video. And all that's left to say from me is, if you enjoy these type of videos, please consider clicking on the subscribe button. And I hope all of you stay happy, healthy, and most importantly cultured. This has been Pyro Primal. Until the next video. Bye!